The night was too quiet. Ethan had always been the restless one, witching in his sleep, grinding his teeth, muttering things that made no sense. But tonight was different. Tonight the air smelled like wet fur and iron, and the woods behind their house whispered with something far older than wind. Lucas watched from the hallway as his brother thrashed in bed, muscles knotting beneath sweat-slick skin. A low, guttural sound escaped Ethan's throat, not a moan, not a growl, but something caught between. The moonlight cut through the blinds, painting stripes across his convulsing body. Then came the crack. Lucas recoiled as Ethan's spine arched violently, bones snapping and reforming beneath the surface. His fingers curled, nails darkening into claws that split the sheets. A scream tore from him, raw and ragged, before it dissolved into something inhuman. Then silence. Ethan's eyes flew open. They weren't his eyes anymore. Lucas barely had time to stumble back before his brother lunged from the bed, teeth bared in a snarl. The thing that had been Ethan hit the floor on all fours, limbs twisting, skin splitting under coarse black fur. A wet, ripping sound filled the room as the transformation completed. The werewolf turned its head. Lucas ran. He barely made it to the basement before the first crash echoed upstairs, wood splintering, glass shattering. The beast was hunting, and it knew he was here. Huddled behind the furnace, Lucas clamped a hand over his mouth, listening to the heavy breaths just beyond the door, then a wet sniff. A claw scraped the frame. The door burst open. Yellow eyes gleamed in the dark, and then nothing. Morning came too bright, too normal. Lucas found Ethan curled naked in the ruins of the kitchen, blood under his nails, no memory of the night. But the torn carcass of a deer in the yard told the truth. The first full moon had come, and it wouldn't be the last. The days after the first full moon were a slow unraveling. Ethan didn't remember the transformation, but his body did. Lucas watched in silent horror as his brother's skin took on a feverish pallor, veins standing out like dark rivers beneath the surface. His appetite became ravenous raw meat stolen from the fridge, eggs cracked and swallowed whole, even the family dog giving him a wide berth. Then came the pain. Ethan would double over without warning, fingers digging into his ribs as if trying to claw something out from beneath his skin. His joints popped with every movement, his teeth ached, and his gums bled. Lucas found the bathroom sink stained pink one morning. Toothbrush bristles snapped like they'd been chewed. But the worst was the hunger. It wasn't just food. It was something deeper, something primal. Lucas caught Ethan standing at the edge of the woods at dusk, nostrils flaring, shoulders tense like a predator catching a scent. His eyes, once warm and brown, now held a flicker of gold in the right light. Then the nightmare started. Ethan would wake screaming, sheets drenched in sweat, babbling about running on all fours, about the taste of blood hot on his tongue. Lucas would clamp a hand over his mouth, terrified their parents would hear. But they slept through it all, oblivious. Until the scratches appeared. 3 jagged lines across Ethan's chest, as if something inside him was trying to break free. The wounds healed too fast, knitting together before Lucas could even suggest a hospital. That night, Ethan sleepwalked for the first time, bare feet padding down the hallway, fingers dragging along the walls. Lucas followed, heart hammering, only to find him in the backyard, kneeling in the dirt, mouth smeared with something dark and wet. Rabbit fur clung to his lips. The next full moon was 2 weeks away, and whatever was happening to Ethan was only getting worse. The truth came in blood and moonlight. Lucas had spent days watching his brother deteriorate. The unnatural strength. The way Ethan's pupils would thin to slits when anger flashed through him. But denial was a fragile shield, and it shattered the night the neighbor's dog disappeared. Its carcass was found behind the shed, ribs cracked open, organs missing. The ground was torn up in violent arcs, as if something had pinned it down and fed. The sheriff chalked it up to coyotes, but Lucas knew. The bite marks were too large, the claw marks too deep. That evening, Ethan locked himself in his room, snarling at anyone who came near. Their parents assumed it was teenage rage. But Lucas pressed his ear to the door and heard the wet, crunching sounds of bones breaking and reforming. A choked scream, then silence. When the doorknob rattled from the inside, Lucas ran. Barely made it to the garage before the window above the sink exploded inward. Ethan landed in a crouch, his body caught between human and beast jaw elongated. fingers tipped with black talons, eyes reflecting the moonlight like a predator's. Blood dripped from his mouth. Lucas scrambled back, knocking over tools. Ethan's head snapped toward the sound, nostrils flaring. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other, brothers no longer. Then Ethan lunged. The attack was brutal, instinctive. Lucas barely managed to roll away as claws gouged the concrete where his head had been. He grabbed a shovel, swinging blindly. The impact connected with a sickening crack, and Ethan howled a sound too guttural, too wild to be human. Something in that cry snapped Ethan back. He staggered, his features twisting between agony and recognition. The claws retracted, the snarl dying in his throat. When he looked at Lucas again, his eyes were human, terrified, guilty, covered in blood that wasn't his own. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The truth was in the torn flesh under Ethan's nails, in the animal fear in his gaze. The curse was real. And the next full moon was coming. The weight of the secret pressed down on Lucas like a living thing. Every glance at Ethan carried the memory of those inhuman eyes, those blood-stained claws. But blood bound them tighter than fear ever could. Lucas took to locking Ethan's door at night with heavy chains, scavenged from the garage. He lined the windows with salt and iron old superstitions he'd scoffed at before, but now clung to with desperate hope. The basement became a makeshift cell as the next full moon approached. Reinforced with whatever Lucas could find. Steel cables, padlocks, even the thick oak bar from their father's weight set. Ethan didn't fight him. That was the worst part. The quiet resignation as he tested the restraints himself, as if he wanted to be caged. But the beast inside had other ideas. 3 nights before the full moon, Lucas woke to the sound of splintering wood. He found Ethan halfway through transforming, his bones cracking audibly as he tore at the chains. His teeth had already sharpened into fangs. His mouth dripping saliva tinged pink with blood from where he'd bitten through his own lip. The hunger was winning. Lucas acted without thinking. He grabbed the silver letter opener from his Deska family heirloom he would never thought he would use as a weapon. The moment the metal touched Ethan's skin, the reaction was immediate. Flesh sizzled. Ethan howled, a sound so full of pain it made Lucas's stomach twist. But it worked. The transformation stalled, the beast recoiling from the burn of silver. They both collapsed to the floor, panting. Ethan's human eyes met Lucas, full of shame and gratitude in equal measure. Neither spoke. Words would only make it real. By morning, the chains needed reinforcing again. Lucas started carrying silver in his pocket after that, a fork stolen from the goods set, a dime from his grandfather's collection. Small protections against what was coming, against what his brother was becoming. The full moon rose in 2 nights. Lucas wasn't sure the chains would hold. The moon hung swollen and heavy in the sky, its pale light dripping through the trees like liquid silver. Lucas had prepared for this. Night reinforced the basement door with steel brackets, lined the walls with silver chains, even fashioned a crude muzzle from barbed wire and leather. But as Ethan's screams turned to snarls behind the locked door, Lucas knew none of it would be enough. The first sign of trouble came at midnight. A chorus of howls erupted from the woods too close, too coordinated to be wild dogs. Ethan's body jerked at the sound as if pulled by invisible strings. His bones snapped like dry kindling, his skin splitting open to reveal the monster beneath. The chains held for exactly 37 seconds before the beast tore free. Lucas barely had time to throw himself aside as the werewolf burst through the door, wood shattering into splinters. The creature paused only briefly, nostrils flaring as it caught Lucas's scent. Recognition flickered in those yellow eyes, just for a moment before the hunt took over. The beast was fast, faster than anything human. Lucas felt the rush of air as claws swiped past his face, close enough to leave 3 thin lines of fire across his cheek. He rolled behind the couch, silver fork clutched in his sweating palm. The werewolf circled, saliva dripping onto the carpet, each drop sizzling like acid. Then the window exploded inward. Another werewolf landed in a crouch, this one larger, its fur streaked with scars. The alpha. It regarded Lucas with cold intelligence before turning to Ethan's beast. A challenge rumbled in its chest. Ethan's creature hesitated. The alpha lunged. Fangs met in a spray of blood and fur as the 2 monsters clashed. Lucas pressed himself against the wall as the fight tore through the house furniture, smashed to kindling. Walls gouged with claw marks, the air thick with the copper stench of blood. When it was over, the Alpha stood victorious, Ethan's beast whimpering at its feet. With one last glance at Lucas, the Alpha howled a sound that shook the windows and bounded into the night. Ethan's creature followed without hesitation. Lucas was left alone in the wreckage, blood dripping from his cheek, the silver fork still clutched in his hand. The hunt had begun, and he was the only one who could end it. The forest swallowed Lucas whole. Moonlight barely pierced the thick canopy overhead, leaving the woods a labyrinth of shadows and half-seen horrors. The trail of blood and broken foliage was easy enough to follow. Ethan's beast had crashed through the underbrush like a thing possessed, its claws leaving deep gashes in the bark of trees. The deeper Lucas went, the heavier the air became, thick with the stench of wet fur and rotting meat. Then came the howls. Not just one or two, but a dozen voices rising in unison, a chorus of hunger and fury. They echoed through the trees, making the very ground tremble. Lucas's hand shook as he gripped the silver knife he'd taken from the kitchen. Its edge dull, but deadly to what lurked ahead. A scream cut through the night. Human. Lucas ran before he could think better of it, branches whipping at his face, roots snagging his feet. He stumbled into a clearing and froze. The pack had gathered in a loose circle, their massive forms silhouetted against the glow of the full moon. At the center lay a deer, its belly torn open, steam still rising from its guts. But it wasn't the carcass that made Lucas's blood run cold. It was Ethan. His brother's beast crouched beside the kill, muzzle dripping red, eyes glazed with something between rapture and revulsion. The Alpha stood over him, its massive head lowered in what could have been approval or a threat. Then, as if sensing Lucas's presence, every wolf in the clearing went still. Ethan's head snapped up. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, Lucas saw his brother in there trapped, terrified. Then the Alpha snarled, and the moment shattered. The pack turned as one, their growls vibrating in Lucas's chest. Ethan's beast hesitated. Then it lunged. Lucas barely had time to raise the knife, before claws raked his arm, sending hot blood splattering across the leaves. He swung blindly, the silver connecting with fur and flesh. A yelp of pain, then the coppery temps of werewolf blood filled the air. The pack scattered all but Ethan's beast, staggered back, a gash smoking across its shoulder where the silver had bitten deep. Its yellow eyes burned with betrayal. Then it turned and fled into the dark. Lucas was left alone, his arm bleeding, the knife slick in his grip. The hunt was far from over. But now he wasn't just chasing his brother. He was being hunted too. Dawn found Lucas slumped against the gnarled roots of an ancient oak, his wounded arm stiff with dried blood. The silver knife lay beside him, its edge blackened with werewolf blood. The forest had gone quiet as if holding its breath. Ethan found him first. Not the beast, but the boy. His brother emerged from the trees naked, and shivering, his skin streaked with dirt and blood, the silver burn on his shoulder still raw. His eyes were human again, but haunted. The look that passed between them carried the weight of what had happened. The attack, the knife, the betrayal. Lucas expected rage, accusations. Instead, Ethan collapsed beside him, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "I remember everything," he whispered. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Lucas said nothing. There was nothing to say. He tore a strip from his shirt and wrapped it around Ethan's shoulder, the fabric soaking through with blood almost immediately. Ethan flinched, but didn't pull away. The walk home was silent. By the time they reached the house, the sun had climbed higher, its light exposing the wreckage of the past night, the shattered basement door. The claw marks gouged into the walls, the blood smeared across the floorboards. Ethan stopped at the threshold, his fingers brushing one of the deeper grooves in the wood. "I can't control it," he said finally. Lucas looked at his brother, really looked in. Saw not a monster, but a boy drowning in one. "Then we'll find another way," he said. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a start. The fever came first. Ethan's skin burned to the touch, his veins standing out like dark vines beneath the surface. He thrashed on his bed, teeth clenched against the pain as the curse worked its way deeper into his bones. Lucas watched helplessly as his brother's fingernails blackened and peeled away, revealing the sharpened claws beneath. The old journal they'd found in the attic lay open on the floor, its yellowed pages filled with frantic handwriting and crude sketches of wolfmen. The previous owner, their great-grandfather, judging by the name scrawled on the inside cover, had suffered the same fate. His final entry was smeared with what looked like old blood. The hunger never stops. It only sleeps. Ethan's transformation wasn't limited to the full moon anymore. Shadows stretched unnaturally around him even in daylight. His reflection sometimes showed only the beast, yellow eyes gleaming back from the mirror for a heartbeat before fading. At night, Lucas could hear his brother's bones shifting beneath his skin, the quiet whimpers as he fought to keep the monster at bay. Then came the bloodlust. It started with raw meat stolen from the fridge, progressed to the neighbor's missing cat. Lucas found Ethan in the backyard one dawn, kneeling over a rabbit's mangled corpse, his mouth smeared red. Their eyes met, Ethan's filled with shame and something far more terrifying. Satisfaction? The journal spoke of a cure, a ritual requiring wolfsbane, harvested under a new moon, silver forged in a dying man's breath. But the final ingredient made Lucas's stomach turn. The blood of the one who bit you. The alpha still roamed the woods. The next full moon was coming. The forest no longer slept. Lucas felt the pack's presence before he saw them below. Rhythmic growling vibrating through the earth beneath his boots, the scent of wet fur and rotting meat thickening the air. The moon was a sliver in the sky, barely casting light, but the wolves didn't need it. They moved like shadows given teeth. Ethan's transformation had become more violent with each passing night. His skin split too easily now, his bones reshaping themselves with sickening cracks, even when the moon was hidden. The journal's cure was their only hope, but the price was written in blood, the alpha's blood. Lucas adjusted the silver knife strapped to his belt, the cold metal biting into his hip. Wolfsbane burned in his pocket, its bitter scent barely masking the coppery tang of the blood-soaked bandages wrapped around his forearm. Reminder of how close he'd come to dying the last time. Then the howling began. Not from the distance, not from the trees, from behind him. Lucas spun just as Ethan's body convulsed, his spine arching unnaturally as fur erupted from his skin. His brother's face contorted between human agony and animal fury, his teeth elongating into fangs, his nails into claws. But this time, his eyes didn't lose their awareness. This time, he let the change take him. The pack emerged from the darkness, 5 massive shapes. Their muzzles stained with old blood, their yellow eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence. At their center stood the alpha, its scarred muzzle lifted in a silent challenge. Ethan's beast lowered its head, not in submission. In warning, the alpha lunged first. Fangs met in a spray of saliva and blood as the two wolves clashed, their snarls tearing through the night. The pack circled, waiting for their leader's command, their growls rising into a chorus that made Lucas's bones ache. He gripped the silver knife. The hunt had begun. This time the prey was the hunter. The night bled crimson. The moon hung swollen and red above the trees, its sickly light painting the forest in shades of rust and shadow. The air smelled of wet fur and hot iron, the metallic temps of blood thick enough to taste. Lucas pressed his back against a gnarled oak, his fingers slick around the silver knife as the pack closed in. Ethan's beast was losing. The alpha had him pinned, its massive jaws clamped around his throat, black saliva dripping onto his matted fur. The other wolves circled like vultures, their growls vibrating through the earth. Lucas could see the wound on the alpha's flank, the cut he'd made with the silver knife still smoking faintly in the moonlight. It wasn't enough. Lucas moved before he could think better of it. The wolfsbane burned his palm as he crushed it against the blade, its poison seeping into the silver. The alpha's head snapped up, its nostrils flaring as it caught the scent. Recognition flashed in those yellow eyes, then fury. The alpha lunged, but Lucas was ready. He sidestepped, driving the knife deep into the beast's shoulder. The reaction was immediate. The wolf howled, its flesh sizzling as the poisoned silver burrowed deeper. It staggered back, blood frothing at its jaws. Ethan's beast struck. His fangs found the alpha's throat, tearing through fur and muscle with a wet crunch. The pack froze as their leader collapsed, its body twitching, its breath coming in ragged, bloody gasps. For a heartbeat, the forest held its breath. Then the alpha's eyes dimmed. The curse trembled. The blood moon watched, silent, as the pack turned their gazes to Ethan. Waiting. Silence descended like a shroud over the blood-stained clearing. The alpha's corpse lay steaming in the moonlight, its throat torn open, yellow eyes glazed over in death. The pack stood frozen, their matted fur bristling, muscles coiled tight as bowstrings. All eyes were fixed on Ethan's beast, still panting, still dripping with the alpha's lifeblood. Then the largest of the pack stepped forward. A monstrous wolf with a mangled ear and scars crisscrossing its muzzle. It bared crimson-stained fangs, a challenge rumbling deep in its chest. The message was clear. Killing the alpha wasn't enough. Power had to be taken. Ethan's beast rose on trembling legs. His wounds wept dark blood where the alpha's claws had found purchase, but his snarl carried no hesitation. The pack formed a circle around them, their growls building to a fever pitch. Lucas gripped his silver knife tighter, the wolf's bane residue stinging his palm. Could intervene one well-placed strike, could end this. But the Journal S words echoed in his mind. The curse bends only to the strong. The challenger lunged first. Fangs sank into Ethan's shoulder, eliciting a pained yelp. The pack howled as the scarred wolf dragged him down, tearing at his flank with rabid fury. Blood sprayed the trampled earth, the scent sending the other wolves into a frenzy. Then Ethan's claws found the challenger's belly. A wet, ripping sound filled the air as fur and flesh parted. The scarred wolf staggered back, entrails glistening in the moonlight. Ethan didn't hesitate. His jaws closed around its throat and squeezed. The crack of bone was deafening. When Ethan released the corpse, his muzzle was drenched in fresh blood. His golden eyes burned as he turned to the remaining wolves. One by one, they lowered their heads, baring their throats in submission. The pack had a new alpha, and the curse had its new master. The alpha's blood shimmered black in the moonlight, thick as oil where it pooled in the silver bowl. Lucas stirred the mixture with a sprig of wolfsbane, watching as the liquid hissed and bubbled, releasing tendrils of acrid smoke that burned his nostrils. The journal's instructions had been exact 3 drops under the tongue at moonrise, while the curse still trembles from its master's death. Ethan lay convulsing on the basement floor, his body caught between forms. His fingers elongated into claws only to shrink back, his jaw unhinging with wet cracks before snapping shut. The pack waited outside, their restless pacing vibrating through the house's foundations. Lucas hesitated. Something was wrong. The blood moved on its own, swirling against the bowl's edges as if alive. The stench of rotting meat grew stronger, clinging to the back of Lucas's throat. Shadows stretched unnaturally toward the mixture, drawn like moths to flame. Ethan's eyes flew open, fully wolf, fully aware. "Don't," he rasped, his voice layered with a growl. But Lucas had already tipped the bowl. First drop touched Ethan's tongue. The effect was instantaneous. Ethan's back arched off the floor, tendons standing out like cables beneath his skin. Now blood erupted from his nose, his pores, the corners of his eyes. The pack outside howled in unison, a sound of agony and ecstasy. The basement lights exploded in a shower of sparks. When the darkness settled, only 2 golden eyes remained visible in the blackness. They were laughing. The basement door exploded inward before Lucas could react. Splinters rained down as Ethan's new form emerged from the darkness, no longer caught between man and wolf. But something perfected. Its body moved with predatory grace, muscles coiled beneath a pelt of midnight fur, his golden eyes burning with terrible intelligence. The stench of blood and wet fur filled the air. Lucas barely had time to raise the silver knife before Ethan was upon him. The attack was calculated. A swipe of claws sent the knife skittering across the floor, while a second blow lifted Lucas off his feet and slammed him against the wall. Pain exploded through his ribs as plaster cracked behind him. Ethan's muzzle hovered inches from his face, hot breath reeking of raw meat as a low, amused growl vibrated from his chest. This wasn't his brother, not anymore. Lucas's fingers brushed the wolfsbane tucked in his pocket, the last sprig from their ruined ritual. Ate crushed it in his fist, the poison seeping into his bleeding palm, and smeared it across Ethan's snout. The reaction was immediate. Ethan recoiled with a shriek, his perfect form faltering as the herb's toxins seared his senses. His claws scrabbled at his face, tearing furrows in his own flesh. Lucas didn't hesitate. He dove for the silver knife, rolling just as Ethan's claws gouged the floorboards where his head had been. The beast was faster. A crushing weight landed on Lucas's back, claws piercing through his jacket to score his skin. Hot drool dripped onto his neck as Ethan's jaws opened wide, then froze. A tremor ran through the beast's body. For a heartbeat, Lucas saw something human flicker in those golden eyes. Recognition, regret, it was enough. Lucas twisted and plunged the silver knife into Ethan's chest. Not deep enough to kill, just enough to hurt. The howl that followed shook the house to its foundations as Ethan fled into the night, his blood black and thick as tar splattering behind him. The fight was over, but the war had just begun. The forest whispered secrets in a language of blood and broken branches. Lucas followed the trail of blackened droplets, Ethan's unnatural blood that sizzled where they fell on the autumn leaves. The deeper he ventured, the heavier the air became, thick with the musk of the pack and something darker, something ancient. The trees here grew twisted, their bark scarred with claw marks older than memory. He found them at the heart of the woods. The pack knelt in a circle, their muzzles pressed to the earth in submission. At the center stood Ethan, his transformed body gleaming in the moonlight. The silver wound in his chest already knitting itself closed. But it wasn't the physical change that made Lucas's breath catch, it was the altar. A slab of weathered stone, stained black with generations of sacrifice. Upon it lay the gutted remains of a stag. Its antlers snapped, its ribs pried apart to form a grisly cradle. And within that cradle, the journal. Their great-grandfather's journal, its pages now soaked in fresh blood, the handwritten words glowing faintly red. Lucas didn't need to read them to understand. The truth howled at him from every shadow. The curse was never meant to be broken. It was meant to be inherited. Ethan turned, his golden eyes meeting Lucas's. In them swirled centuries of knowledge, of wolves who had come before, of the terrible gift passed down through blood and betrayal. His muzzle peeled back in something too sharp to be a smile. The pack rose as one, not to attack, to welcome. Lucas's hands trembled as the first pang of transformation hit his gut, a pain he'd never felt before, but that the journal had described in perfect, horrifying detail. The truth wasn't that his brother had become a monster. The truth was far worse. He was becoming one too. The transformation burned like liquid fire in Lucas's veins. He collapsed to his knees as his bones began to shift, the ancient curse awakening in his blood. Ethan no longer just a beast, but something more watched from the stone altar, his golden eyes reflecting centuries of moonlight and murder. The pack circled closer, their growls vibrating with anticipation. Lucas had come prepared. With shaking hands, he tore open his shirt, revealing the crude symbols carved into his chest, silver and wolfsbane mixed with his own blood. The markings pulsed as the curse fought against them, black tendrils of smoke rising from his searing flesh. Ethan snarled, sensing the threat. The pack attacked. Claws ripped into Lucas's back as fangs found his shoulder. Hot blood streamed down his arms, but his fingers never stopped moving, never stopped tracing the final symbol onto the altar stone, the one he'd found hidden in the journalist's spine, the one meant not to cure but to end. Ethan lunged. Lucas raised the silver knife not to strike, but to offer. The blade sank into his own palm. Blood human and pure splashed across the altar. A deafening silence fell. Then the stone cracked. Light erupted from the fissure, white and searing, tearing through the gathered wolves like wildfire. Ethan howled as the curse was ripped from him, his perfect form unraveling in ribbons of shadow and blood. When the light faded, only two brothers remained, human, broken, alive. The forest exhaled around them, the ancient weight lifting at last. Somewhere in the distance, a new dawn whispered through the trees. The curse was broken, but the scars would remain.